Hey, Marty here. Welcome to the Sublime, to the Ridiculous video blog edition. Your Grandpa Joe, he had cars. Oh my, he had cars. And to be fair, they ran the gamut. Most of them ran the gamut toward the bottom end of the order, but some of them weren't too bad. Me pops spoke fondly of a 1938 12-cylinder Packard limousine that Joe had. I guess it was an ideal family car. I mean, after all, it was me grandma, me grandpa, and 8 kids, and you needed a big vehicle, especially driving down to Illinois like they did to visit their respective families. But Dad always liked that. Dad always said if there was one of Joe's cars he could have somehow kept, it would have been that 12-cylinder Packard limousine, and got to admit, I would have loved to have seen it myself. He also had a white Chrysler Imperial, I think it was a 69. It was pretty good, as I recall. It was in good shape, drove well, looked good. And the story behind it was that at one point it belonged to the governor of Florida, or a former governor of Florida. I actually remember that car myself. I never got a chance to drive it. But it did look good and it did ride well. I remember that car. I think it got wrecked. I don't really remember. But when I saw it, it did look good. And you got to like the story about, it used to belong to a governor of a major state like Florida. Then he had cars that, I guess qualified as cars by the barest definition of what a car actually is. He had a 61 Ford Fairlane that he paid $35 for, and I mean, this car was the very definition of going 0 to 60 in about 20 minutes. I remember being a passenger with him in that car one time, and Grand River Avenue is a pretty wide road by us where we live down in Detroit. I believe that the traffic lights cycled through twice before he got that old Fairlane across Grand River Avenue. I mean, pickup? Nope. Didn't have pickup. No pickup at all. What else have I got? No, Eldorado. He had this black Chrysler Eldorado. Cadillac Eldorado, my mistake. And, oh, this car was rough. He should have never bought it. We had nothing but problems on that. I remember one time he had me slide under there to change the oil in it the first time. And I got under there and I had to yell out, "Joe, I can't change the oil in this car." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because apparently this oil pan got dinged right where the drain plug is, and they covered it over with heavy roofing tar in order to seal the leak." I don't remember how we got the oil changed in that car after that. I just know that he said, "Well, get out from under there then," and that's what I did. Me Uncle John had a couple of good quips about that car. He said, the brakes were so bad, maybe what we need to do is install some of those chutes like dragsters have so that when we apply the brake, boom, the chutes just come out and stop the car. He remarked one time getting back to the shop that he saw that old Eldorado down on Hancock Street and nearly didn't recognize it with the hood down. Uncle John could be pretty funny, and then those are a couple of his quips. He had a 65 Chevy Bel Air that kind of ended up my brother Phil's car, and that wasn't a bad car. Its claim to fame was he set it on fire one time. He burned out the back seat because he was driving, and he flicked a cigarette out the driver's window, and it came right back in and lit the back seat on fire and burned out the back seat. But he kept driving that car. Smelled burnt the whole time he had it after that, and that car got driven until 1983 when it got T-boned by a guy that blew a stop sign with me pops and my brother Phil in it. And I think Phil has always been sad about that because that old Chevy kind of became his car. He had a purple Cadillac, 67 Cadillac tail fins. He bought it. It wasn't purple. He bought it, but he found a deal at Earl Scheib, which was a big car painting franchise at the time in the Detroit area, and they had some sort of special, but there was only a limited number of paints, and he chose lilac. He did this while we were down south visiting my family down there in 75 or 76. I can still hear my old man. I can still hear me pops. He pulled back up in our Chevy Suburban getting back from North Carolina, and there's this Cadillac sitting on the street in Avery there, and I can still hear my dad say, "Huh, wonder whose purple Cadillac that is." It was your dad's dad, as it turned out. But Joe did what he did with so many of his cars. He put a hitch on that thing, and we used it to drag welding equipment around Detroit. Ended up me driving that car into a lot of job sites and a lot of auto factories and whatnot, and I heard every purple Cadillac joke in the book. Even at 16 years old, it grew tiresome. But to bring this full circle, he did sometimes get good cars. He had this 67 purple Chevy Impala, and it was good. It was a real good car. He was real happy with that car. He'd only had it a few days, and he bragged on it and bragged on it and bragged on it. What a great car it was. The story Joe liked to tell about it, though, was he got home one evening with that car, and he walked into the house, and me grandma Cosgrove met him at the door and said, "Hey, Joe, sit down. We need to talk cars." And Joe says, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And she held out her hands and said, "Just give me the keys." And that real nice Impala became my grandmother's car, and I think rightly so. And whether that's how she acquired it, I don't know, but you never let facts get in the way of a good story, do you? Anyway, Joe, me Grandpa Joe, he had cars and they ran the gamut. And I'm sure there are a lot more out there that I'll have a chance perhaps to tell you about it later on. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, put a comment in the comment menus. In the meantime, this is Marty going from the sublime to the ridiculous. And I swear that light cycled through twice before we got that old Fairlane through.